the Emo Hour. Your weekly power hour of all things emo and adjacent. With your hosts, Katie and Nani.
Hello and welcome to the Emo Hour. It's your host, Nani, and my good friend, Katie. Hi, Katie.
What's up?
What's up?
Welcome. We've got a very exciting episode today, so I think we should just get into it.
Yeah.
So, Nani, what's making you emo this week?
Well, you know this, but I just had to share with the listeners that I got shit on by a bird for the first time in over a decade. And I just don't know, like, do I take that as good luck or it's definitely making me emo, but it happened so quickly, and I was like, man, this hasn't happened in forever. But I do swear that it is considered good luck, right?
When you said that, I was like, I think that's a thing. I think that people think that that's a good luck sign.
Yes. The last time was when I was like living in New York, and I was getting off of a subway train at the Mets Stadium to go to a baseball game, and that was horrible timing. At least this one wasn't like that bad of timing, but yeah. So there's that for you.
Well, that happened a couple days ago, right? So how have you been feeling lucky since then?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess. I don't know. I'm just like, something good is coming my way. I know that. Like, something very good is coming my way. And maybe that was just the bird giving me a little bit of a heads up, like, don't you worry, it's coming.
Well, that was the last thing I expected you to say, even though I was aware that happened to you. So
yeah. We're human, and I had to just share that little piece of info about me and my week. So
right. Well, I'm glad you're trying to look at it in a positive light. You know,
always silver lining, always.
And something good is coming to you, and the best of luck on that.
In the words of the emo sphere, and like very much a Warped Tour thing, PMA. Positive mental attitude has always been like a thing. So yeah, we're gonna PMA getting shit on by a bird. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Love that. Well, good for you.
What about you? What's making you emo this week?
Well, it's this episode. This episode is coming out, a few days after Father's Day, and it's our Father's Day episode. And we had such a good time on actual Father's Day interviewing both of our dads, and it's just so fun, I think, especially for us and people that know us well, but just so fun for everybody because they were just such a unique and interesting way to connect with our dads, and it was so fun for us to both be there for each of them too.
Yes.
So I'm just feeling very emo about it.
I'm going to jump on your bandwagon for a second because I so agree with you. This was such a gift to be able to have with our dads, and like you said, doing it on Father's Day was extra special. But I would say, like, to anybody listening, like, you don't need to have a podcast to do this. I would highly recommend it. I would highly recommend having some sort of audio recording or whatever. I mean, like, we're going to have this gift for the rest of our life. Mm-hmm. And we fortunately have a video component to it as well. But yeah, I totally get why it's making you emo.
Well, and that's a great point. But also, like, if you don't want to have a recorded conversation, there's things like Storyworth, which have you heard of that? And that's actually something that I've gifted to both of my parents a couple years ago. And we've kind of slowly been doing that. But Storyworth is like an online subscription service, and it prompts your parents or whoever, it could be grandparent, whatever. It prompts them with questions, and then they can answer. And then once you're done with it, it puts everything in a like real book, and you can add pictures and stuff. And that's been, like I said, kind of a slow process for both of my parents. I got it for them a couple years ago, and my mom's still answering questions though. My dad's kind of done with it. But there's things like that, or you can buy like journals that they can handwrite in, and something like that is just really special to have. So and Mother's Day and Father's Day is a great time to do something like that.
I'm still, by the way, like I mean, I got roasted, and I'm still. I needed more dirt from your dad. But
I know.
I suppose the listeners are about to find out about this roasting.
It is, yeah. So Nani's was especially entertaining with her dad, Brad. So there was some roasting. He was very kind. It was more of unearthing some, quirky teenage and younger years events and things. So I think let's just get into it. Let's take it over to that interview with Nani's dad, Brad.
I hope you enjoy.
I sure did.
Oh my God. Up next is a very special guest, my dad. I'm an only child, and let's be honest, definitely a daddy's girl. So while it wasn't just the two of us, it often felt like we were the duo at the center of it all. From car rides where I controlled the aux cord to big life moves across states, we've taken on the world together. After growing up in Hawaii, we moved to Montana when I was in middle school, trading sandy beaches for snowy winters. That's when we started Nani Shave Ice, my first real taste of business, with my dad teaching me the ropes and sparking my entrepreneurial spirit early on. By high school, I was waist deep in shave ice syrup, but also deep in my music-obsessed emo phase, listening to everything from Under Oath to John Mayer, making dramatic playlists and treating every burned CD like it was a love letter to the universe. Through it all, my dad was right there, not just as a parent, but as my biggest supporter. He's always reminded me that I can achieve anything I believe in, and he's been a constant source of encouragement, whether I was blasting sad songs or planning the next big idea. So let's welcome my dad, Brad, to the Emo Hour.
Yay!
Hi, Dad.
Welcome,
Hi,
Brad.
guys.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Thank you both so much.
That was
It's
a great
pleasure
intro.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, I started to almost cry a little bit when I was reading the intro, too. Because
getting
I'm an
emo.
emotional gal.
We're getting emo already.
As
right?
the definition of emo goes, right? Emotional.
Exactly.
Exactly. Well, we have some questions for you. Katie interviewed her mom for Mother's Day, and we're going to ask you some of the same questions that she asked her mom. So, and we're probably going to ask you some questions of stuff that, I don't know, hopefully you'll remember some of the names from back then, because it's kind of crazy to say, but my 20-year high school reunion is this summer. I don't know that I've told you that yet, Dad. So
I was actually thinking about it because it's, the fact you graduated in 5, and then in college in 10, it's easy to remember those dates.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
The perfect child.
The only the only child, so it's very easy for me to remember.
Well, I'm very interested to hear just how generally Nani was as a teenager.
Nani was a perfect child, like she just said.
Yeah, perfect.
And I went along with most everything that she wanted to do, with a few exceptions, but I just let her, find her feet and carry on as she did, and things have turned out pretty well, I think.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, you did give me a lot of freedom with like being able to drive to concerts and stuff in high school. Which,
well, that was and we taught Nani to drive quite early, and I let her drive. Whenever we would travel around Montana, which is huge, whether it would be back and forth to our place on the lake, or whether it was a trip most anywhere, I'd let her drive, and the more she drove, the more comfortable I was with her going other places. And so it was early, like sophomore, junior in high school, she was taking trips to Seattle and Portland and places, that probably most of her friends weren't allowed to go, especially by themselves. So.
Yeah, those are big trips when we're talking like 16, 17, something like that.
yeah,
Huge, yeah. But she had a car that was very reliable and big enough that I wasn't worried. And she had a lot of experience driving, so I felt very comfortable letting her go.
yeah, that freedom was really awesome for me. I look back on that and realize how lucky I was to be able to do some of that stuff. And you know what, Dad? I totally forgot until you said it now, but you did always have me drive on whenever we drive from place to place, because again, back to the kind of instilling confidence, like that's exactly what you were doing with the driving.
Right. And that I was talking to somebody yesterday. There were my Jeep and a couple other Jeeps all parked in this hiking trailhead, and the one lady said, "Yeah, I learned how to drive in a Jeep, a standard Jeep. And then, of course, we had a standard Jeep when Nani was growing up. And she and I think every one of her friends learned to drive a standard stick shift using that old Cherokee. It was a 95 Cherokee. We'd take that out and drive, find a big open field. One particular was out by Fort Missoula, and they would just ride that clutch and pop it, and it would just shake all over, but they had a blast, and they all learned how to drive a standard shift that way.
I know. That's so true. Yeah, my dad did teach a lot of people how to water ski and drive stick.
Oh, yep. Okay.
And there were a couple we never taught. We never were able to get them up on water skis, but for the most part, everybody learned. So.
Yeah. It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Nani still drives almost all the time. So that has continued.
Yeah, she's a driver, and and just at the blink of an eye, she would, this was in high school, maybe junior and senior years for the most part, but at the blink of an eye, they'd be off Spokane, Seattle, especially. They have, there were a lot of that music, the emo music, going on in Seattle, and that was their destination. And she had a lot of mutual friends in Seattle, so she had places to stay. And I always felt quite comfortable. I mean, even though Seattle was a big city, but we'd traveled enough together. She was pretty street smart, so.
Just the perfect child. Again, we're back there.
You're really just digging deep on this only child syndrome.
No,
perfect child.
Not only perfect.
That's like my daughter. She's the perfect child and the only child as well.
Yeah. Exactly.
And she'll always be that way, Katie.
Yeah. Well, and something that I've learned, I feel like pretty recently, is that you guys would allow bands to stay at your house that were coming through Missoula, which is kind of crazy and not something that my dad would have ever allowed, I don't think.
Well, it was never on their first, they just not show up and, move into the house. It was after, in most cases, as I recall anyway, that I would have met them on previous tours through Missoula, and then on subsequent trips through Missoula, Nani would ask if there was an occasion where they needed to stay overnight. We'd allow them into the house because I'd already got to know them by that point, so I felt comfortable doing it.
And I'd also ask you to go buy donuts for them.
Yeah, right. Because I don't remember any of them drinking coffee, but we'd show up with donuts.
Yeah. Yeah, and for the most part, all these kids were like, I'm saying kids now too, but we were kids back then, but I also feel like everybody was straight edge, and that was like a very strict rule too, because like I didn't drink in high school. Like anybody that I would have asked to stay the night, I feel like because they stayed in the basement, because there was levels of our house, but they would always stay in the basement, but like none of them ever drank or anything like that. So that I was only bringing home like good, nice scene kids, if you will.
Yeah.
Emo
and,
kids.
Smoking cigarettes. I never remembered that going on. So if it did, they were being very discreet about it. So.
Yeah. No, I don't think it ever happened, because I wouldn't have ever asked that, I don't think.
Well, I just like that you used the word straight edge and scene, and I was like, I wonder if Brad knows what those mean.
Oh, Dad, do you know what straight edge or scene means?
Scene being what's going on, or a particular,
well,
what's for the moment, that scene, or
kind of. I feel like, so the term scene is used interchangeably with emo a little bit, in the sense that if you were in the scene, you were an emo kid. So the word scene and emo can kind of be, they're used very similarly, I would say. Would you agree, Katie?
Yeah, I mean, emo is more of like the genre, and scene is more of like the culture, I think, is probably a good way to put it.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And then straight edge was when you were straight edge, like no drugs, no drinking, like
right. Those terms have been used interchangeably through different generations, so pretty much meaning the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even I grew up with the word straight edge, referring to people that didn't smoke or didn't drink.
Okay. Interesting.
or studied way too hard.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And we were both straight edge scene kids.
Yeah.
So
We
found each other later in life.
I know. Two goody two shoes, just really enjoying angry music.
Yeah.
And I in retrospect, I think Nani, I don't remember Nani dressing up quite like she does today, especially the mascara and all. Like,
No.
back in
Oh.
high school, she may have put it on after she left the house, but I don't remember.
Do you mean the goth makeup?
Yeah, the goth makeup.
Okay.
No, Dad, I wasn't goth in high school. My hair, so there's variations of like emo kids, and I just now, like, as Katie and my persona, like when we go out, like we just really lean into it because it's fun for us.
Yeah,
And
that's kind of what I thought.
yeah, but like back then though, I did have like my hair being like blonde, black, and red, or the different like that. And I was always kind of like an in-between scene kid. Like you remember Byron and Dennis? Like they were more of the traditional like emo kids.
And I remember Dennis, I think, being more, goth, but and I guess Byron to a point too. But
Yeah, like the big like hair swoop and the
right.
studded belts and the skinny
Yeah.
jeans and the black clothing. I was
I
kind
don't
of like
remember a lot of piercings or anything.
No, you're right. They didn't have a lot of piercings.
Yeah.
Byron had his lip pierced though, I think.
Yeah,
No,
I
Dennis
think
did.
your scene, as far as emo went, was pretty tame in Missoula. You guys were probably doing what you thought was emo scene in Missoula, but probably in comparison was pretty tame
Yeah.
by other city standards.
I mean,
Oh,
we're in small
yeah.
town Montana after all, so that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah. But the music
did you
wasn't.
Yeah.
your music. Yeah, the music was the same.
What'd you think of Nani's emo style and like the Neapolitan hair that we've heard about?
Well, I don't think it probably was not as drastic as she might have let on. I don't remember it being.
Dad, my hair was half blonde and
Yeah, but I guess most of the emo, some of the other ones I remember, they were, the jet black,
yeah.
black. And yours was pretty tame by other standards. So I didn't really think much about it. It was, she was in high school, and I remember being in high school, and we all did our own things in high school. So within reason, I let her do what she wanted to.
Express myself through my hair.
Express, right. And she did.
Yeah, or like when my corsage to prom was a bird of paradise because I wanted to be different.
Yeah.
Love it.
And I found they all wanted a limo to go to prom in, so I went up to our friend that lived a couple houses up that owned all the mortuaries in Missoula, and I said, would you mind if my daughter used your limo for the prom? And he was all behind that. But
Do you mean a hearse?
It wasn't. No, it wasn't a hearse, but he had a white limo that he used to, for, conducting, getting people to and from the services, and
Okay.
but he owned all the mortuaries in town.
This is a pretty emo story, to be fair.
That's pretty
Well,
goth.
and then on top of that, he was when I first met him. He would, like I say, lived a couple houses up from us. He had recently gone through a divorce, and he had found another lady, and he was probably 10 years older than I was at the time. So at that time, he was probably in his mid 50s, later 50s, and so anyway, they had a little engagement or wedding party, and they invited me up there, and I think, his name was Rick, and Rick and I were in we were cocktailing in his kitchen, and the first time I'd really gotten up close, and Rick he'd put so much makeup on bodies that he had started using makeup on himself. It was pretty hilarious.
This is going a completely different direction than I thought it would.
So we had emo friends. We had an emo mortician, up the street from us.
Okay. I've never heard about the mortician neighbor.
Yeah,
Well, his nephew drove the limo for us. My dad calls limos limos.
Yeah.
No, actually, Nani coined that term, and we would go to Honolulu. We lived on Kauai, and we would go to Honolulu for a weekend or something. And rather than taxis, everything in Honolulu that was for hire were limousines, and she would call them limos.
Oh,
So
that's cute.
anyway,
So it
yeah,
stuck. Limo
yeah.
stuck.
So I mean,
Limo
that
service.
was that prom and the delivery of them to and from the prom was quite memorable using the mortuary
And it was all,
limo.
we were all emo kids because it was
Yep,
like
you were. Yeah.
Brian and Byron and Leslie and Al. And yeah, it was. And then, Dad, I don't know that I probably told you this, but like Emily, because Emily came to our prom too. She opened up like the little area where you'd put cigarettes, and there was tissues left over from a service in there.
I'm just glad it wasn't a hearse. I thought that's where it was going. It was like
No.
you went to prom in a hearse. I was like, okay.
Well, he probably would have let them use one of those, but we requested the white limo.
Oh, that is so funny. Um,
That's amazing.
well, so Dad, like when you were explaining that, like my hair was definitely more on the emo end. Like I wore it more, like I'd say that was probably the most emo part of me because I had blonde and black hair, then I had like blonde, red, and black hair. But like you said, I still was wearing like Abercrombie and Fitch sometimes. I didn't go into like the full black, like
Right.
true emo. And same with Katie. Like Katie still like she had blonde hair, but she wore more like eyeliner. I'd say she was a little closer to like Byron's style than my style back then.
And Byron had a sister, didn't he? That
He did.
was into that group. Wasn't she part of that emo group?
She played soccer, but she came sometimes to stuff, but she was more in the athlete group, I would say.
More than anything, I remember you deciding to paint your room black,
Oh my gosh.
which, you know, that really didn't go with me. So I think, and then she ended up. I think didn't you tinfoil all the walls in your room?
Nani, you sound insane.
Correct me. Does that sound right?
No, okay, so I ended up doing one wall turquoise, I think, and then so it was white walls, one wall turquoise, and then one wall was tinfoil. So we spray adhesive the back of tinfoil, and that one wall had, because I think you were like, you can't do more than just one wall. And then I strung, sunglasses have always been very important to me, and I remember stringing along like a wire from one end to the other, and that's where I hung up all of my sunglasses, was on the tinfoil accent wall.
And that was the turquoise one, or there was a different turquoise one?
There was a white walls, turquoise wall, and then tinfoil wall.
But the
no black walls.
Yeah, the original plan was all black, and I think
You put the kibosh on it.
I think I vetoed that.
Yeah.
So,
That's probably for the best.
yeah.
I do feel
Yeah.
whoever bought that house when you sold it, Dad, I imagine that would have been a pretty tricky change for them. I don't know how they would have gotten or painted over that tinfoil.
Yeah, that was a mess because we used that real strong 3M spray adhesive, that had real strong fumes.
Just had to go get new drywall altogether.
Probably.
They probably did.
Probably. Thanks for letting me do that, Dad. That was pretty wild.
Yeah, and then we had you had the bathroom, your bathroom upstairs. You remember had the palm tree in it. That was tiled into the shower bath area.
That's right. I was an only child. Yeah.
It was a great bathroom. Yeah,
That was a great bathroom.
Heated floors.
Yeah.
And Nani was the famous one for towels. And I said, "How many towels do you need, Nani?" And this was actually when we lived in Hawaii. She says, "I need 3, Dad. One for my hair, one to dry off with, and one to sit on.
All right. And that's as a toddler we're talking.
We're really leaning into this only child.
We are. Okay. So here, I can change the subject if you want.
I'm like, these are warning signs for you, Katie, because you're gonna if you just have Reagan, don't let them turn into me.
Don't let her
the 3-towel child.
Don't let her have everything she wants. We could change the topic to talk about Brad a little bit more, because we've talked a lot about your weird teen years. And, Brad, you mentioned earlier that everybody kind of has like a teen phase or rebellion phase or something. So what was your teen rebellion phase?
Or in like, what kind of music did you listen to when you were in high school?
Yeah, I wasn't so rebellious, I don't think. I mean, any more so than any teenager would be, as far as, trying to find their direction, whatever. But yeah, I grew up in the 60s. So, 1960, I was 10. Music was, as strange as it might sound, I grew up in Missoula, Montana. I was born and raised there. So growing up in Missoula, I paid a lot of attention to the California scene, which was surf music, and I'm still in love with surf music, whether it was the early instrumental Dick Dale, or then on the oncoming of Jan and Dean, the Beach Boys, and then that was always probably the music that I followed more than anything. And then, of course, in the early 60s came the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and that whole push from Europe that came to the mainland United States. So
okay,
that was my music. And then later on, I guess after late high school, early college, I became more enthralled with country western. So those are, so
I'm like, all my memories are Beach Boys, Beatles, and country, pretty much, but that classic country.
And then
like
Nani,
90s country, or like Loretta Lynn classic country.
Yeah, no, more, probably not 90s so much, probably would have been late 70, early 80, first part, when Willie Nelson first came on, Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, Tammy Wynette, Jones, Tammy's husband Jones, I can't think of his. Anyway, that sort of country.
Okay.
And we, and that all goes back to my upbringing, is that our pharmacy had a morning program that it was an hour program that would run from 7 in the morning till 8 in the morning. It was all country western music. So it was called Stoic Roundup Time. And then as it became more expensive to sponsor those sort of programs, it whittled down to a 10-minute show, which was from 7:50 to 8 o'clock in the morning. And most people used it as almost as a clock. If it was still playing, if it was on at 8 o'clock and had to be at work at 8, they were running late. So yeah, it was, so that was part of my country background as well.
I didn't know that. That's cool. Dad, so you talked a lot about the music that you listened to. I'm curious that, like, knowing the music that I listened to when I was in high school, I'm curious, did you like any of the music that I was listening to? Because it went from, like I said in the intro, it was John Mayer, or it was screaming emo music, or it was really hard, hard music, or it could be like really poppy stuff. You knew this, like I was all over the map for my music. I just was music obsessed. So
exactly. So a lot of the stuff that I would hear coming up from her upstairs room, some of it I wasn't into. The loud, what you guys call screamo, was not my favorite. But then then you got into things like Smash Mouth.
Smash Mouth.
That one record was so good, though.
It was a great record. And then John Mayer. And then trying to think of we saw them in Bozeman, Nani, and they at that time they would open for John Mayer.
Oh, John Butler Trio or Guster?
No, Gus, yeah, both Guster and then the Adam Levine, what was his
Oh,
band?
Maroon 5.
Maroon
Okay.
5. So I mean, we saw those bands in Bozeman, I remember, and then of course Salt Lake, Red Rock, and then Spokane. Who do we see in Spokane was in his early days.
Was it Dierks Bentley?
No,
Brad Paisley?
Brad Paisley we saw outdoors
Silver Mountain.
at Silver Mountain, which was a great concert. But I'm thinking at the
Keith Urban.
Keith Urban at the Knitting Factory or one of those little places.
Yeah,
in
what used to be
Spokane.
the Big Easy. You know what I realized? What my dad
Those are great concerts.
Yeah, those were so good. What my dad failed to mention is that he gave me a lot of freedom to go travel places, but he also would take us places. Like my freshman year of high school, I think it was when you took Emily and Leslie and me down to Park City, Utah to go see John Mayer for the first time.
Right.
Yeah, so he was there for a lot of these trips too, which was so fun.
And I wouldn't always go to the concerts, but I would. And then I took you over to the Gorge a couple times, and I wouldn't necessarily go into the concert, but I'd be able to listen to the music from either where I parked or wherever. Yeah,
it's a really nice dad.
I didn't hear a lot of specific emo bands being named.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't know, Brad, if you can remember specific emo bands.
Looking back, I probably don't remember. I wouldn't have known at the time what an emo band and John Mayer, what the difference was. So that was just my ability to tell the difference. So.
Well, no, but like you definitely knew the difference because like you liked some of my music and you hated some of my music.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have known the band's names of the specific emo bands. So.
Yeah,
because I didn't care for that music.
Right. Fair enough.
That's totally fair. Completely fair.
And then I think my last question is if you could describe Nani's emo phase in one word, what would the word be?
Tame.
What?
She was very tame as far as coming. Yeah, I think so. I mean, she was not how would I put it, headbanging emo person, unless maybe she was out in the part I didn't see, but she didn't seem to strike me that way.
No, I would say.
But she was definitely followed the music, though. She was in love with the music.
Yeah. I think
she has been with all music for the most part. Yeah. And she's, I put her through a lot of car rides and times at the house or times at our lake cabin where all we listened to was country western. So she had a broad listening path. We didn't always have to listen to her music.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's true. But that's very true. I think that's actually a fair word to use when like relating it specifically to emo, because I think I was like visually more of a tame emo person, but musically I loved all of it, because like I think about going and seeing like the Blood Brothers or like all the bands that I can recall, but like my dad probably has, you would kind of know the sounds, but you probably didn't know any of the actual bands.
Yeah, exactly. And I could search my mind forever and never come up with the name of one of the emo bands, to be quite honest.
Okay, fair enough.
That's fair.
Smash Mouth would be the closest thing I probably thought.
You're really putting me on blast here with the Smash Mouth.
You put yourself on blast a couple weeks ago. So.
I know. That record, though, is there's a specific record. It wasn't their debut one, but I
can still see the album cover.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And they used to have that I can't remember what it was. It was like this countdown, a really famous countdown. And I remember the first Smash Mouth record coming out and thinking, wow, this is really weird and fun and whatever. And then they kind of went off, just like their career just wasn't super huge.
Wasn't it one of the members from Boise?
Yeah, one of the guys lived in Boise.
That's what I thought.
I don't know if he's from Boise, but yeah, lived in Boise. That's where, and died in
and
Boise
then he
too.
then died in Boise, and I think since COVID even, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was.
That he
passed
passed away. That he passed away. Yeah.
It was recent, and he wasn't that old. He was pretty young.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah,
Well,
I remember that.
Dad, is there anything else you want to share about my high school music, high school emo phase that you think the listeners need to know about? Other than me being the special, most perfect child that got to do whatever she wanted. Because that's what I've taken away from this.
Yeah,
well,
me too.
Yeah, but and then at times she talks about how hard she worked at Shave Ice, which was true to a point, but there were a lot of times with Shave Ice it was hard to bring her to the table.
Oh, there you go. That's some truth.
But we did work hard.
We did. We worked very hard at it, but there were times that you were not too interested in doing it.
That's fair.
But the beauty of the Shave Ice was that all of her friends were involved in it too, so we had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah,
it really wasn't work. It was just, we got very busy at times, but we had a ton of fun doing it.
Yeah, it was really fun. That was one of the best. I'm still so grateful for that experience because it's an experience that not a lot of, I don't like, and there's not a lot of my peers who have a similar experience to that of being able to work with their friends and their dad and stuff. And I know that I probably wanted to sleep in and not go work or whatever, or I wanted to go do something else at times, but I loved every second of it.
Yeah. And we had a couple different, we had a trailer and actually like a food bus that we used for service vehicles, and we built both of them from scratch, both Nani and I. And we had a ton of fun just doing that part.
So you're saying I did do some work though?
Oh yeah, she did a lot of work.
That's a lot of bonding.
And she was a professional Shave Ice tester.
Gotcha.
Had to be sure that the quality was there,
Yeah, quality assurance.
That was the beauty of our product, is that we had tested Shave Ice in our years in Hawaii. So I think we'd been to every island in Hawaii, and we'd take little nuances from each one that we would try, and then we incorporated that into the product that we delivered in Missoula, and it really was a good product.
Yeah. It was. I would say Emily agrees with that too. Emily being one of my best friends from growing up.
Yeah.
Well, Dad, thanks for joining us on the Emo Hour, and thanks for putting me on blast about my only child syndrome.
That was there was a lot of wild things that just happened.
and the mortuary limo that took us to prom.
And the tinfoil. I think originally Brad said tinfoil in the windows, and I was like, oh no.
No. It was the wall. No, I said walls.
Okay, maybe I just heard windows.
No, if she'd have been doing the windows, that would have come down. You've got to get up, Nani.
Yeah, I know. I was my dad was my alarm clock a lot of times, and I just had no trouble sleeping. That's all I can say.
Right. Yeah.
I think even to this day, Nani doesn't have a lot of trouble sleeping.
Nope, never have.
It's a skill.
Yeah.
It truly is.
Yeah. All right. Well,
anyway,
I love you, Dad.
It's been a pleasure talking to you girls. So.
This was cool for me to get to experience this cute little interaction between the two of you. So
I really hope that your dad puts you on blast as much as my dad did.
Yeah, we're gonna find out.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to listen to the final product.
All right. Love it. Happy Father's Day too, because we're recording this on Father's Day.
Yeah, happy Father's Day.
Thanks again to both of you.
All right, our next guest is the man who witnessed my most dramatic eyeliner, my most tragic poetry, and my questionable fashion choices. Yes, folks, my dad is here to reflect on my most emo years, the highs, the lows, and the angst. Over the years, he's helped me move apartments more times than either of us can count, at least once a year for a solid decade, usually in the heat, usually involving too many stairs. And pretty recently, after all this time, he found out that I went to my first Warped Tour behind his back after he very clearly told me not to. I'd say I'm sorry, but it was Warped Tour, and in fairness, he probably should have known when I came home with raccoon eyeliner and a sunburn. So today, we're sitting down to talk about what it was like raising me during the height of my emo years, from the music and mood swings to what it's like parenting and coaching me in soccer through my most formative years. He survived it all with humor, patience, and only mild emotional scarring. He's also the man that bought me tickets to my first Avril Lavigne concert, the man who taught me how to drive, and probably has trauma flashbacks of me blasting Screamo in my car. This is either going to be really fun or mildly uncomfortable, but either way, welcome my dad, Jim Franklin.
Hey, thank you.
Welcome.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much.
And happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
So the first question that we asked Brad was, what was Nani like in high school? So that's, I think, the great first question for you was, what was I like in high school?
Yeah, what was Katie like in high school during her
I don't
emo
know
phase?
what Nani was like in high school. But Katie was a really good kid. She said that on a previous podcast, and she really was. She got good grades. She was athletic, and she almost always did what she was supposed to do.
Almost.
Which is why I didn't know about the Warped Tour thing for a long time, because I trusted you.
And the trust was earned and deserved most of the time.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
Well, that's funny. Nani was called the perfect child, and I didn't get quite the same credit just then, but I'll take it.
I'm going to say that was pretty dang close. Always getting good grades, and what we realized about the two of us is, meeting each other later in life, realizing that we have a mutual bond of a similar type of music, but we really were very similar in high school. I was playing tennis, she was playing soccer. We both were listening to similar music, and we were both like very good kids. Like we weren't doing anything bad. Like we weren't drinking underage or anything like that. We were just enjoying this music that we still know and love today.
Yeah, I think in my relationship with Katie, I was the one that was behaving immaturely and drinking too much.
We probably swapped that, at different points in our lives. Now we're both mature and responsible, hopefully.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, the type of music that you remember Katie listening to back then. Like, how would you describe that kind of music?
Well, I took her to her first Avril Lavigne concert. She brought that up, and it wasn't my favorite kind of stuff, but I didn't dislike it either. And then I remember Lincoln Park because it's named after a park in Chicago. But I didn't really pay that much attention, and since the podcast has come on, I've learned a few emo names that I thought were kind of inventive, like Taking Back Sunday. I think that's a good name. I like that one. And then the My Chemical Romance one, I'm still trying to figure that one out. I don't know what the hell that is.
That might be the point, though.
Yeah.
That's funny. What other band names do you recall or have you learned about recently or recall me listening to?
I think I just emptied the gun on that one. I don't know.
Just those two? Well, Take Back Sunday is an all-time favorite of mine, so that's a great one to bring up. And they're like
Blink 182. I didn't mention Blink 182, and that's your fave.
Of course, yeah. Blink 182, definitely. They're more in the pop punk sphere than the emo sphere. But those are all great examples. My Chemical Romance I was never a huge fan of, but they're also kind of emo royalty. So you've named some good ones.
You've done way better than my dad. He brought up Smash Mouth. He said that I love Smash Mouth.
Which you did.
Which is true. It's definitely true, but it's far from emo.
I love Smash Mouth because the lead singer is like from Boise, right?
Yes.
We talked about that. Well, he was living in Boise and he died in Boise. We don't know if he was from there or just, lived there.
But he's got Idaho roots, which, you gotta Got to get behind that. I love that.
Absolutely.
Well, the Avril Lavigne concert, and I couldn't remember this actually. I was trying to think if you actually went into the concert, like if I was at that age where you went in and just hung out at the bar or something, or if we went to Tacoma for it, and I know you bought tickets for my childhood friend who was a neighbor, Amber, and I to go, and my cousin Tori, I think, went too. Mm-hmm. But did you go into the actual concert? I don't remember.
I did not. I spent the concert in a bar just outside the Tacoma Dome.
There you go, waiting for us. Yeah.
Sounds like my dad too.
And Taking Back Sunday opened for Avril Lavigne, actually, on that tour.
That's I didn't remember that. I guess that's interesting.
And she's still, Avril Lavigne is still touring, still releasing new music. I mean, she was kind of like the pop punk princess. So that's a big one.
Yeah, I don't mind Avril Lavigne.
What about my, going to Warped Tour? This was the first year that you didn't allow me to go, but I still went anyway. Like, what's your memory of that?
Well, I think you've made fun of me on the podcast previously for having a misconception about what the Warped Tour is or was, and that's accurate. It's a bad name. So, having your teenage daughter go to something called the Warped Tour just seems like a bad idea.
That's all it took? You're like, I don't like it.
I don't like the name. She can't go.
Is that really what it was?
Well, that's a good 80% of what it was. And the maybe the remaining 20% is when you're the father of a cute little blonde teenage girl, you really don't want her going anywhere.
All right. I mean, Nani, we talked about with her dad a very different life where he's just like, she did whatever she wanted. Pretty much. But I still went. We've told the story before, but my friend Mallory and I drove to Salt Lake. I told you that we were going to go help friends of hers move, which, like, why would we need to go help friends of hers move? I don't know, but you believed me because you trusted me, as you said. And we stayed with her friends, so that part was true. But we did go to Warped Tour one day in Salt Lake, and I mean, there was not great things happening at Warped Tour. It's a big music festival, like there's all kinds of things happening. But that's another thing we've talked about is I didn't partake in the bad things that were happening at the music festival. I just wanted to go to the music festival.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Warped Tour's back.
As rebel moves go, I suppose that's a pretty mild one.
Well, thanks. And then I went in Boise the next year, and you were fully aware of that. Maybe you weren't a fan of it, but you were at least aware of it. Yeah. And then I don't remember when you actually found out, but I know it was probably within the last 10 years. So, I mean, probably 15 years after it happened.
Yeah, it was fairly recent, and I forget exactly how, but I think Mallory said something on Facebook or something. It's like, what? You did what? When?
Yeah. Oh, my God.
We sure did.
That's so good.
We sure did.
So I know Katie stayed blonde through high school. One of my bigger outlets, visually speaking, as it relates to emo music, was my hair. And I know that Katie, you didn't dye your hair or anything, right?
I had a couple times where I put black in my hair. It wasn't totally black, but I had a black chunk in my hair in high school, and I had a black layer at some point a couple years later.
Okay. So Jim, I'm just curious, when you think back to her high school days and her emo days, visually, what were her most emo attributes?
Well, the eyeliner, and you're talking to a guy again, so I mean, I'm kind of checked out most of the time on most of that stuff anyway. But I did notice some strange makeup choices, and the black streak in the hair was kind of strange. But it was it was way better than some of the stuff that could have been going on, and I think we had a pretty good relationship. So I don't think I ever even mentioned any of that stuff to you. It was just like, if that's where you're gonna go, strange makeup choices. makeup choices are strange to me overall. So
What about when I was like piercing my ears and like I had my industrial piercing for a while, which this was all after I was 18, but I had an industrial bar, which is a bar at the top of my ear. I had my lip pierced. What'd you think of those?
I don't really understand why anybody wants to do that, and I feel the same way about tattoos. I'm really glad that you didn't go there, but it is a personal choice, and once you get to be an adult, those are your choices to make. Just I don't get it. I don't understand the attraction.
Okay. So you didn't necessarily like it, but it wasn't like a big deal to you.
Not a big deal for sure. Yeah.
I do remember I got a piercing in my ear when I was probably 16 that Mom was very upset about, because when you're under 18, you're supposed to have a parent like give that permission, and I think that we talked about Amber earlier. I think Amber's sister gave the permission
because she was 19.
Yeah, it's like I'm not even related to this person. And she gave permission to me. It was just like one piercing up top on my ear. Like it was just a stud. It wasn't really a big deal. And that's probably what the piercer thought, is this isn't really a big deal. But Mom was pissed. So
I do remember that. And there were a few episodes that really ticked your mom off, because she's pretty religious. And I'm not. I guess I wasn't that worried about it.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think I had any of my other piercings until after I turned 18 based on that experience. So
yeah. Well, and like you said,
for throttling you back then.
I was gonna say, like you said too, like it's piercings, right? It's so different than like a tattoo, because I feel like our parents probably would have gone nuclear if we would have gotten tattoos. I know mine would have.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to make a lot of enemies, but I think tattoos are a bad choice, because a few years down the line, you probably don't appreciate them as much as you do when you first get them.
There you go.
You just like a hot tub, you don't use them as soon as when you buy them, and then you stop using them.
But you can't
tattoos and hot tubs.
Tattoos and hot tubs.
So that was kind of my rebellion, I guess, what we've talked about. What were your teen rebellion years, or like what was your teen life like?
Yeah, and like what kind of music were you listening to? Because we were listening obviously to emo music.
Yeah, I don't really understand the definition of emo, and I've listened to your podcasts and I've listened to the music, and I still can't say that I know where the line is. So when I was a teenager, I really liked Jimmy Buffett, and I really liked the Eagles, and I was a big Jackson Browne fan. And I think the Jackson Browne music, the emo stuff that you guys like, that I understand, the lyrics are important. Mm-hmm. And Jackson Browne lyrics are important, so I think there's some similarities.
Yeah. Well, artists can have emo songs even if they're not emo artists. And you said you don't know where the line is. And I think when you're talking about any kind of art, I think it's hard to draw clear lines. So I think that's a fair assessment in general. But certainly in my mind, emo is very tied to the culture of it, and like the fashion and the look, and but emo also has a specific sound to me, but it also kind of encompasses pop punk, like you mentioned Blink-182. They're not really emo. They have some emo songs, but they're more pop punk. So if you want to draw the line there, I wouldn't really call Blink-182 an emo band. Or do you like any of the music that maybe you've learned of with our podcast and our radio show, or that you remember me listening to when I was in high school? Did you enjoy any of it?
Yeah, I like some Blink-182 stuff, and I don't mind Avril Lavigne. She's got some songs I like, and there's other bands that are kind of contemporary that probably aren't emo. Like I heard you guys talk about John Mayer on a recent podcast, right? And I really like John Mayer. I think he's great.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call him emo, but Nani's a big John Mayer fan.
Yeah. Yeah, he was one of my big musical like loves in high school for sure, and throughout my entire life. Which, yeah, it's just kind of funny that because my dad was coming up with names like John Mayer and Smash Mouth when I was asking him about emo, and you're doing such a great job answering the question about emo music and emo bands. So thank God you pulled some names out for us.
I'm punting on the emo thing. I don't know where you draw the. I don't understand where the line is drawn.
No, neither does my dad really, because he's like, you just loved music, and like I would say like harder rock sounding music, and or like Katie and I both love screamo music, where the singers instead of singing they're more screaming. And
I do not like that.
Yeah, that's a hard.
My
no.
dad didn't either. No, my dad didn't either. Because it's very much an acquired taste, but like once you hear it and get into it, like. It can be so good, but it's an acquired taste.
I will probably not acquire that taste.
You're committed.
So it sounds like your high school days and stuff, and like the music that you were listening to back then was Jackson Browne, the Eagles, that type of stuff. So do you remember listening to a lot of that, Katie, when you were growing up?
Oh, totally. And I mean, we went to the Eagles at the Sphere this year, so
yeah.
I love the Eagles too. And Dad and I went and saw the Eagles like 15 years ago in Boise for the first time, and then saw them at the Sphere this year, which was really cool. And Jackson Browne, I love Jackson Browne too, and he played here at the Sun Valley Pavilion, and Dad came up for that. We went to that together too. And Jimmy Buffett, a lot of that, especially in the summertime. And I'm a big Kenny Chesney fan, and I think Kenny Chesney is just like very much like Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah.
Very similar. But also, I was thinking with like the Eagles and Jackson Browne, like your dad would have thought that was like rock and like not good music and like rebellious stuff, right?
Absolutely, yeah. He was. I mean, we're talking pretty. I was the fifth of 5 children, so my parents were older. And my dad liked big band music. It was like the Lawrence Welk, and he really loved a singer named Peggy Lee. That was like you wear the formal gown and you got the big microphone, and that was his kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's just like you were listening to what is now like referred to as classic rock, but it was rock music, and the older generation probably looked down on that a lot. And I would say emo is just kind of like another step in that direction of like, what is this shit?
For sure.
Like, why it's so whiny and angsty, and what's going on, and why do they like this?
Well, it's not like new for teenagers to have angst. I mean, I think there's some Greek literature that talks about the generational difference in how teenagers feel sorry for themselves, and so I think that's just part of the human condition.
Yeah, and the like enjoying new things that the older generation is like, why do you like this? I also think that's pretty common.
It is very, very common. Every generation has to assert their independence.
Yeah.
By going to the Warped Tour when they don't have permission.
Yeah. Oh, and I started to say Warped Tour is back. So fun facts. The very first ever Warped Tour was in Boise, Idaho in 1995.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I heard that
and
on
then
your podcast.
It stopped. Oh, yeah, exactly. And it's back this year for the first time in years, and it's happening this weekend as we're recording in Washington, D.C. So there's 2 more dates coming up, and Nani and I are
planning on going
that out. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's cool though because they're streaming it on Amazon, so you can actually watch the music from afar, like from your living room. It's pretty cool.
That is cool. And
it's kind of the way to do festivals is in your living room.
So it's a lot more comfortable, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. There's a Warped Tour and a military parade in Washington, D.C. this weekend.
Yep. That's currently happening. The Warped Tour has been planned for some time, though. If you could describe my emo phase in one word, what's the word you would use?
Wow. I should have realized you were going to ask me that question, huh?
You can think on it for a minute. We can give you some time.
Black.
Okay.
Ooh,
That's good.
that's a good one because you did wear a lot more black.
Yeah.
I wore a lot of black. I mean, in high school, I wore black Dickies like every single day and band T-shirts, unless I was wearing soccer stuff, I would say. And a lot of black eyeliner. But I had a white belt. I remember really liking my white belt.
Did Katie go to a lot of, like, when you think of her high school days and like her music, because I was music obsessed. Did she go to a lot of concerts like in the Boise area? Like, obviously you guys went to Avril Lavigne and did some of those, but did she ever go to like little, like, smaller shows or anything like that closer to home?
Yeah, I knew that she was a big music fan, and she went to Boise to see people. And I couldn't give you the names, but I knew that music was a big part of her life, and I thought that was great. I play guitar, and I enjoy music too. I was glad it wasn't. I don't get the screamo stuff, and I was glad I wasn't exposed to too much of that. But that was probably just Katie not exposing me to too much of that.
Be like, he's not going to like this, so I'm going to listen to this by myself.
I know. My dad said something similar. He's like, maybe I don't think Nani was the headbanging, like, rock and roll type of girl, but maybe she was doing that at concerts. I don't know. But you know what I've realized, though, in talking with both of our dads back to back, which has been so awesome, is that we both grew up in very, like, musically driven homes. Like, there was a lot of music around us. Like, hearing the stuff that your dad listened to and the bond that you two have between certain music, and like mine sounded like mine was more Hawaiian oriented too, because of like my upbringing there, and also my dad just loving the Beach Boys and surf rock when he was younger. So, but like, it's very similar. Like, a lot of the bands you're talking about, I don't know, I just think it's cool that we had so much like musical influence in our younger years.
Yeah, it's important.
Did you have a moment of silence for Brian Wilson passing away?
You know, my dad and I love the Beach Boys, and on the radio show, I played a Beach Boys song to open it up just in his honor. Because that guy made a lot of really good music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lived a good life.
For sure.
Okay, well, unless you have something else that you would like to offer, Dad.
I really feel like I need to know, like, give me something embarrassing, because I was just totally, like, clowned by my dad.
It was kind of crazy, truly.
I was like, you got to give me something embarrassing about Katie in high school. Like, we need something embarrassing.
Well, I think the best I could do, and hopefully this doesn't get me in too much trouble, but if I was worried about Katie's judgment in any one particular area, it was with boys. She had a couple.
Mom said something like that too.
Yeah, she had a couple of boyfriends that I was glad didn't last, and nothing against Travis, he wasn't one of them.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear.
Right? I don't know. Your picker changed over the years. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, if that's it, I'll take it.
Yeah. I'm like, come on. There's got to be something more embarrassing.
Well, I could talk about messy rooms and stuff, but that wouldn't.
Yeah, my room was a disaster forever.
Yeah. Did you? I was always super neat. Did you? Katie?
It was really bad.
Did Katie ever have a hard time? Like, was she a really good sleeper? Like, you know how a lot of teenage kids, they sleep a lot? I, like, had no problem sleeping as a kid, and I would never want to get up in the morning for high school or anything like that. My dad would be like, it's time to get up, like, constantly. He'd have to be my alarm clock, which is really embarrassing to say out loud.
Well, Katie didn't have any issues with sleeping. Her room was like a complete disaster, and I guess I learned how headstrong she was when she was about 5 years old. We had like a daily argument about how she needed to clean up her room, and it was just like argue, and finally I told her I was going to give her, I think it was $10 to clean up her room, which to a 5-year-old that's like, like $1 million or something.
Oh yeah.
I'll give you $10 if you clean up your room. And she's 5. She disappeared into her room, and she was in there about half an hour, and she came out, closed the door, and said, "It's not worth it."
Oh my God, if that's not the most Katie thing I've ever heard.
Pay me more. Or let somebody else do it, please.
So,
no, it was a disaster. My room was a disaster for most of my life living at home, right?
So I gave up, and we just kept the door closed.
Just remove the messy room just by closing it.
Yeah,
but your question was about sleeping. I definitely would sleep in, and in my teen years, I would sleep in late. But I don't think I needed Dad to wake me up if I had to wake up for the most part.
Oh my God. Yeah. I think we learned that I'm an only child, Jim. We really learned that I was an only child is really what happened.
Well,
I don't know. Maybe you have a different opinion.
No, I think you growing up with 2 older brothers had a lot of influence on your attitude, because both your brothers had very different personalities, but they were like boys, and boys are different than girls mentally, and so they were pretty challenging to you, which I think was good for you. I mean, you had to overcome a lot and be the little sister, but I'm sure it was tough too.
At what age did I start running the show?
Probably around 5 when you won your argument with me.
I was going to ask, what kind of music were your brothers listening to? If you were listening to emo music, where were your brothers on the musical spectrum? Because you can't ask me that question because I don't have siblings.
Well, I actually talked to my brother James yesterday, and I told him the story about meeting Mark and Tom from Blink-182, and he asked me, about my association with emo, because I think all of this stuff is a little surprising to him, but he's also 7 years older than I am.
Yeah.
So he was, when I was in middle school, he went to college, so he just wasn't around very much. And then, when I was in high school, he was finishing out college, and then he moved to Arizona. So, he wasn't really around for my most emo years. But he said, he's like, to me, I was into punk music. He mentioned Blink-182. He mentioned Taking Back Sunday. I think he might have said Green Day too. So he told me that yesterday, that he was listening to a lot of that. He also is very into beachy type music, which maybe that's more of a thing living in Arizona and Hawaii, but a lot of Jack Johnson type music. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
But
the laid back acoustic guitar singer songwriter vibe.
Yeah, he does. I say he listens to a lot of that. And Dad, I'm going to let you answer. Sorry, I jumped in, but I'm curious to hear what you say. And Sean was very different in his music taste, and he really liked a lot of Celtic music.
What?
Yeah, Sean liked Celtic music a lot. Yeah, Irish music.
Oh, okay.
But he also liked Daft Punk a lot.
I didn't know that. I don't think.
Yeah, I know he liked Daft Punk quite a bit. I also don't feel like he listened. And classical music. It was very different. He liked classical music, Celtic music, and Daft Punk. Those are the first 3 that come to my mind.
So electronic Celtic, which again, that's so far off. That's wild. And classical, and then you're way on the rock end.
Yeah. And he was into theater and drama and choir and stuff like that too. So definitely that type of person usually enjoys kind of show tone-y type of music or whatever. But Dad, what's your thoughts?
I agree. James, I was always relieved, kind of like with you, that he wasn't into some of the real hard stuff that I really don't like. And I kind of appreciated his taste in music. I like Jack Johnson and that kind of stuff too. And Sean was Sean with the Celtic stuff and the classical stuff. He was into a space I wasn't very familiar with, but I didn't dislike it.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Is anything else? I feel like I got to get out of this because I haven't been roasted too bad.
I know, I'm so mad. So mad. I'm through the mud, Jim. Drag her through the mud.
No, I don't have anything to roast you on. You were a really good kid. It was a pleasure to have you grow up in my house.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for joining us today. This is a cool thing to do for me, and a kind of a unique way to connect with you, and for this conversation to live on forever on the internet. So thank you for joining.
That, and it's cool to be able to do it on Father's Day.
Yeah, it's a cool thing to do. It was a little intimidating, and I was probably a little too quiet, but it was a fun thing.
Oh, I think it went great. Thank you so much. I love you.
Love you too.
Oh my gosh, that was just like beyond. I don't really. That was amazing. I'm really glad we did that.
That was so fun, and I feel like I got out of that relatively unscathed, unlike you.
You definitely did. I definitely did not.
But it's all love, and it was hilarious and so enjoyable.
It's all love, and like we said at the beginning of the episode, like that was like what a gift to have this. So it's I loved it. I loved every second of it, and there were some things that he reminded me of too that I kind of had forgotten. Like I love that. I think that's actually a cool thing to take into the future if you ever have kids. It's like I forgot that he always let me drive, and like it makes sense, right? Yeah, like that. It was just learning lessons. So
right, yeah. Well, I learned some things about you for sure. So.
God.
The mortuary limo was my favorite, though.
Yeah, let's just get into the emo lyric of the day. How about that?
Okay, so Nani, what's your emo lyric of the day?
Well, because we did a Father's Day episode, I thought I would choose something that was like kind of slightly father adjacent. And so I went with the band Everclear and their song Father of Mine.
Love it. Now, I considered that as well.
Did you? So
I did.
That is the only thing about this song that I really, like I went a little different on this one. I didn't necessarily choose like an emo lyric. I chose it based on the experience that we just had in the interviews with our dad. And so the line that I wanted to share with you is, I will always be weird.
Perfect. That's it.
Because the rest of the song I don't really identify with, but I was like, Father of Mine, and I will, yep, that's it. So if you didn't get that, if you didn't get a little bit of that from the interview with my dad, I'm always going to be weird.
That's perfect. Well, I was also searching for, a father-related emo lyric, and in my search, maybe you found the same thing. Most songs, emo songs about dads are about bad relationships with
Exactly. It's like, where were you? Where did you go?
Yeah,
and we were never around.
Absent fathers or bad relationships, and I even saw some. Go ahead.
We're fortunate that both of us didn't have that, right? Like we, family's complicated, but we were both fortunate to not have to have that in our lives.
Yeah. And one of the Reddit comments I read when I was like just looking through threads of what people had suggested for, Father's Day emo songs was, you can't be emo and have a good relationship with your dad. And I was like, well, Nani and I fortunately both do.
Yeah.
So I would want to say that. But what I found is a new song to me. It's from the Wonder Years, came out in 2020, and it's called Wyatt's Song, in parentheses, Your Name. And it's such a sweet song, and it's a great, I love the melody of it too. And it's about, the songwriter's writing about their child, and the lyric that I'm going to read is about both when their child was in utero, and then when a infant baby. And I just read it, and I'm a parent, and it just hit me right in the feels and gave me goosebumps, and it's just so sweet. So I will read it. So it's called Wyatt's Song by the Wonder Years, which I think you're pretty familiar with one of the guys in the Wonder Years, right?
Yeah, my buddy Casey.
Yeah, exactly. So the lyric is, I recorded your heartbeat. It's 1:33. The tempo's in my blood now. I hum it when I'm lonely. I recorded your heartbeat. I stared at your knees. I wondered which one's going to be the bad one in your 30s.
I love that. I love that.
I can't. It makes me want to cry.
I love
so sweet.
No question, you win emo lyric of the day, and yeah, that's really lovely. That's an awesome. I didn't know that lyric. I mean, I know the band obviously, but that's
yeah,
a
I didn't
great
know this
lyric.
song. I know the band, but I didn't know this song. So it's a great song. And it made me teary-eyed just now, just thinking about like that feeling of being pregnant and hearing your kid's heartbeat. So
Oh, well,
there we
I teared up
go.
at the beginning of the episode, and you teared up at the end.
There
What
we go.
what a perfect sandwich.
What a perfect sandwich.
And a perfect
Okay.
emo sandwich.
Yeah. But thank you so much for listening. I'm going to play the intro to Wyatt's song by the
Yeah.
Wonder Years. Tune in next week. But I hope you
Yeah.
enjoyed this one. Super fun. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the Emo Hour.
Yeah. Happy hump day.